Once upon a time, in a quiet kingdom far away, lived a kind and gentle girl named Cinderella. She lived with her stepmother and two stepsisters who treated her very poorly. While they wore fine dresses and slept in cozy beds, Cinderella was made to clean, cook, and sleep in the attic beside the fireplace. Her clothes were worn, her hands were rough, but her heart still soft and full of hope. One morning, a royal messenger arrived in town. The king was throwing a grand ball so his son, the prince, could find someone to marry. Every young lady in the kingdom is invited. The messenger cried. Cinderella's heart fluttered. She had always dreamed of going to a ball. She stepped outside and looked up at the tall castle walls. Maybe a prince would see her and sweep her off her feet. But when she asked her stepmother if she could go, the woman laughed. You in rags. A prince wouldn't even glance your way. She turned back to her chores, leaving Cinderella with a lump in her throat and a dream in her heart. For days she wondered about the upcoming ball. Would everyone have fun without her? Would the prince ever find someone better than her stepsister, Drizella? Or how about that other stepsister, Anastasia? She hoped the prince wouldn't pick either of them. Though Cinderella didn't want to admit it, her stepsisters were pretty. They both had silky blonde hair, rosy cheeks, and the prettiest dresses in town. For Cinderella, combing her long, tangled brown hair was enough of a chore. And she rarely had the materials to make new dresses. All of her clothes were hand-me-downs from her stepsisters, and none of them fit quite right. Her stepsisters liked to laugh at her and say she looked like an old rag doll. But Cinderella just sighed and kept sewing. She couldn't bear to upset anyone, and she knew upsetting her stepsisters would only make life worse. So instead, she dreamed of attending the ball and maybe finding a handsome prince of her own. On the night of the ball, her stepsisters wore sparkling gowns. Cinderella helped them dress, hiding her sadness behind a smile. When they left, she whispered to herself, "If only I had a gown too." Suddenly, a soft glow filled the room. Out of the light came a fairy godmother, with a warm smile and twinkling wand. "My dear, you asked for a gown. Now I must hurry. It will take a while to finish," she said. The fairy waved her magic wand over Cinderella, and poof, a beautiful dress appeared on her body. The gown shimmered like stars. It sparkled like the moon. And Cinderella felt like the most beautiful girl in the world. Then the fairy godmother went to a nearby pumpkin. She tapped it with her wand, and poof, the pumpkin turned into a golden carriage. Next, the fairy godmother turned 6 mice into horses, each wearing a fancy black bridle. She finished by transforming a nearby broom into a coachman. "Now, my dear, you shall go to the ball," she said. "Remember," the fairy warned, "this magic ends at midnight. If you stay past that hour, everything will turn back into a pumpkin, a mouse, and a broom." Cinderella thanked her fairy godmother and hurried to the carriage. She needed to make it to the ball before midnight. When she arrived at the castle, everyone turned to look at the beautiful girl in the golden carriage. Cinderella stepped out and walked toward the entrance. Inside, the king and queen welcomed her. They too were stunned by her beauty. Soon, the prince joined them. He couldn't help but stare at the sparkly shoes on Cinderella's feet. "Are you enjoying the party?" Cinderella asked him. "Oh, yes," the prince answered, still staring at her shoes. Cinderella smiled, realizing he probably thought she was the prettiest girl there. Then she led him to the dance floor and twirled around and around. They laughed and talked, and the prince completely forgot about his shoes. After a while, Cinderella looked toward the clock tower. Oh no. She had been having so much fun, she almost forgot about her fairy godmother's warning. She excused herself and ran to the clock tower. As the last chime echoed through the hall, she dashed back to the ballroom. There on the stairs, she lost one of her glass slippers. She picked it up, then raced to the door. Outside, she jumped into the carriage. The driver whipped the horses, and they raced toward home. Cinderella held on tight. She didn't want to be caught without a shoe. Meanwhile, the prince had been watching Cinderella leave. He ran after her, but she was too quick. Before he knew it, she was gone. He stopped on the stairs and stared at the shimmering shoe lying near the carriage. It was too beautiful to ignore. "I must find the girl who owns this," he said to himself. The next day, messengers were sent all across the kingdom. The prince planned to marry the girl whose foot fit the shoe. When the messengers arrived at Cinderella's house, she wasn't there. Instead, her stepsisters answered the door. "Has a beautiful girl been living here?" one of the messengers asked. "Yes," they replied, thinking about Cinderella. "She has long brown hair and likes to sew." The messengers nodded. "And does she have these shoes?" The stepsisters looked down. Cinderella had given them to wear as slippers. "Why do you need them?" they asked suspiciously. "The prince wants to buy them," the messengers said. Quickly, the stepsisters took off their dirty slippers and handed them to the messengers. When the messengers returned to the prince, he shook his head. "These are not the right shoes. Only the girl who lost one can fit into it." Cinderella's stepsisters were shocked. How could the prince know? Well, when Cinderella was cleaning the chimney that day, the soot covered her face. She was too busy to remove it and ended up going to the market with her face black and smudged. A fruit seller knew Cinderella, and though he couldn't see her eyes, he recognized her from the rest of her face. "Hey, haven't you heard?" he asked her. "The prince is looking for a girl who lost a shoe on the stairs of the castle. Why don't you try it on?" Cinderella laughed. "Me? No, I don't think that shoe belongs to me." Then she went back to scrubbing chimneys. The fruit seller ran after her. "Please, let me take you to the prince. You have nothing to lose." Cinderella sighed. She had nothing else to do that day anyway. Maybe the shoe really did belong to her. When they arrived at the palace, the prince was trying on shoes. Each one was too small. Cinderella watched from a corner.
Ow.
How could he possibly find her?
Oh.
She didn't even know he was looking for her. Then the fruit seller approached the prince and whispered something in his ear. "What?" the prince asked. "You think she might fit?" "I know she will," the fruit seller replied. Cinderella felt her face grow warm. She stood up straighter and walked toward the prince. "May I?" the prince asked, holding out the shoe. Cinderella blushed and nodded. She slipped off one of her slippers and held out her foot. The prince gasped. It fit perfectly. He helped her on with the other one. Then he took her hand and led her toward the throne. Everyone in the room applauded and cheered. Cinderella couldn't believe it. The prince wanted to marry her. She couldn't wait to tell her fairy godmother. As the celebrations continued, Cinderella's stepsisters sulked. They couldn't believe she had won the prince's heart. It's all because of her shoe, one sister complained. "I bet it costs more than we do." Cinderella smiled. She knew her success had nothing to do with her shoe, but everything to do with her loving heart. That evening, Cinderella and the prince were married in a joyful ceremony. The king and queen were thrilled with their choice of daughter-in-law. Though she became a princess, Cinderella never lost her kindness. She forgave her stepmother, helped the poor, and ruled with compassion. Because in the end, her true magic wasn't in a dress or a shoe. It was in her heart. And you know what they say? If you treat others with kindness, your dreams may come true. The end.